afternoon, dobre den, and boa tarde. On behalf of CZECH, I am bringing you today a story of hope from Brazil. When I was a child, in the small village where I lived, I saw a swale, and I knew inside this swale there was a saci. A saci is a legendary being. It was, let me show you. This is a saci. They live inside the swale. It's a legendary character. It was created by the Indians and Afro-Brazilians. It is this small boy. It jumps to and fro with its one leg. Its hands have holes on them. It has a pipe in its lips, and he used a red hood. Well, I've entered that swale, and with a sieve, I've caught the saci and put it inside the bottle. It was invisible then. Then I closed the bottle with a cork, and for 20 years, I forgotten my saci in that bottle. Then, someday, 20 years after that, I've had my second encounter with the saci. It was when I was reading this book from Paulo Freire, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And suddenly, an idea jumped out of my head. But I won't tell what the idea was. First, let me tell you a little bit about, where's the thing here? I think that I will have Christina to help me because I am not... Where's the saci? Where? No, the saci is here. Yes, it was the saci. The saci does things like this. So, yes. Let me tell you about the book, where the idea came from me. Paulo Freire was one who developed this book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And he defines oppressed as those who suffer violence. And what is violence? Violence is everything that keeps us from fulfilling our potential as human beings. Well, the next. Paulo Freire developed this theory in a time when everywhere people whose potential was being suffocated rebelled. So you see, the students, the African people in colonized countries, other. The black citizens, other. More, yes. The young pacifists, more. Women, more. And ourselves, Brazilians, we rebelled also against dictatorship. And we've read Paulo Freire in the hiding because he was a forbidden author. But in the 1980s, democracy returned to Brazil. And then Paulo Freire came home, and I was lucky enough to be his student and after to work with him at the Secretariat of Education. Freire has made me understand that the oppressed, those who are struggling against violence, those who are resisting to violence, and who are trying to accomplish their full humanity, they are not they are not powerless victims. They are, in fact, the carriers of hope, the carriers of hope. Why? Because we are, as oppressed, we are building concrete alternatives to get out from our oppressed state. More. So that's why the pedagogy of the oppressed is in fact the pedagogy of hope, because the oppressed are building concrete alternatives for their situation. And this was the idea that made me the Saci jump out of the book, because I've understood that the Saci represents an image in which the oppressed people who created this character, the Indians and Africans, have codified all the characteristics of their oppressed situation. Not only what violence has taken out of them, but what they can offer us as the builders of future, as the carriers of hope. You see, let's where are you? You see, each part of this story shows two faces. More. So, let's move for the previous. This is interesting because it has a hood. This red hood is the only element of this image of the Saci that was not built by the Africans and the Indians. It was an element brought by the Europeans. And what it means, they are the colonized mind, what Paulo Freire said. Ideas and beliefs that belong to the oppressor, but the oppressed, we believe that are ours. And violence is one of these ideas. Violence is a strategy of the oppressed, of the oppressor. And I believe that when we, the oppressed, use violence, we are adhering to an idea that do not belong to us, but to the oppressor. But there is a thing that we can do. We can take this gap, the ideas of the oppressor, and turn it inside out. Okay? Turn it inside out. This is what Paulo Freire did with the pedagogy of the oppressed. He has turned the pedagogy of the oppressor inside out. You see, what the oppressor teaches us? He teaches us submission, fear, distrust, despair. And what is its most important instrument, strategy? Violence. And what the pedagogy of the oppressed teaches us? Autonomy, hope, courage to resist in peace, pacifically resist. And this is return. And Freire says that one of the basic conditions for dialogue, that is the strategy of the pedagogy of the oppressed, is humbleness. To be humble is basic, because when we are humble, we are able to see the shadow that is inside us. We can see the oppressor that lives inside us also. The oppressor is not only outside, it's here also. We must be humble to do this. And then it generates, when we have dialogue and listening, what we have? Trust, critical thinking, and transformation. I have 1 minute to synthesize this. What we did with restorative justice in Brazil. We turned traditional justice inside out. instead of punishing, instead of blaming, instead of adding violence to violence, we made dialogue happen. We made people talk to each other. And we developed this project. It was pioneer in Brazil. It was the first, and now it's all over Brazil. In schools, making in schools restorative circles. Circles to restore the humanity of the people involved in violent acts. And these meetings were very, very productive because they resulted in action plans that addressed the causes of violence. So it's not on violence, it's not on an individual thing. It's a situation that's caused by social and economic circumstances. And when aggressor, people that are named aggressor and victims talk, they can build an action plan to correct this. So now is 10 years after we begin this project. It has spread all over Brazil in this new language, the language of dialogue, the language of restoration of rights, of restoration of humanity, is being talked in all over the country. And now I would like to present you the people who are writing this new story. This you see, people from CZECH and from thousands of organizations all over Brazil that believe this in dialogue as a way, as a strategy to overcome violence. And we want to invite you to join us, because as the Jungle Book says, we are the same blood, you and I. And I am what I am because of who you are. Thank you.
I would like to thank Matze and Ceci for their presentation. Now it's time for you for questions about pedagogy of hope and restorative justice, and anything you might be wondering about after the presentation. You might ask, I understand you can either ask Matze or you can ask Ceci as well, and we will see who answers then. So, do I see any hands up in the air? There is a hand up in the air. Please, a microphone over there. Very well.
Hello, I'm Alma from Slovenia, Humanitas. I'm wondering, how does it look in a class? I saw that you have this program in 50 public schools, so I wonder, how does a session in a class look like?
The sessions are not usually realized.
Microphone for you.
The sessions are not realized inside the classrooms. They are space in the school where they can meet both the person who received the violent act and the person who committed the violent act. And they meet in a space together with their supporters. Each one, the so-called victim and so-called offender, have their supporters, their family and friends, and then they will talk with each other with the assistance of a facilitator who will guarantee that each part listen to each other. And when they have understood each other, then it opens to the community, to other people indirectly involved with violence. So they can suggest things that can be done in order that in the future those acts of violence do not happen again.
Thank you. Do we have another question? We do have another question.
We have?
Hello, I'm Martin from Czech Republic. I'm wondering, how do you persuade the offenders to talk about their crimes or their experience?
How?
How do you persuade the offenders or the suppressors to talk about their experience?
Well, everyone must have the option to participate in a restorative circle or not. And the option is punishment. In a school, if a student breaks the code, the disciplinary code, usually the student is punished with a suspension or with some kind of thing like this. Then it's offered to the student, what do you want, to be punished, or do you want to talk with the person that says that it has been damaged by your action? And set an agreement and make a plan to mend fence. And then he usually chooses to participate in the circle. This is made also in the criminal system. If a person commits a crime, it can participate in a restorative circle. And Dominique Barter, who was a person, a British citizen, who has introduced in the restorative circles in Brazil, he told us that sometimes some persons, they prefer to stay in prison than participate in the circle, because it's too painful to listen to the pain of the other person.
Okay, thank you for both the questions. Thank you, Matze, for your presentation and for your answers.